Hey all, for joining the CauseWalks webinar. Today we have Rachel Clements from Whole Whale. Hey Rachel.
Hi
And
everyone.
we're really excited just to share with you 0 to 60 online fundraising, certain best practices. I know you hear a lot from CauseWalks in terms of what you should do for your online fundraising, for your crowdfunding, for your peer-to-peer. Some of you may have attended some of our courses as well. So today we actually have the luxury and the privilege of having Whole Whale share some of their best practices with us. So they're taking a different perspective, a different approach. And I think that's really valuable because it allows you to round out how you approach online fundraising for 2019 as well as for 2020. So a few housekeeping items to announce before I hand it off to Rachel. So this webinar is being recorded. So in a few days after today, you will get sent a recording to webinar. It's 100% free, so there's no charge for it. And also you'll get the slides related to this webinar as well. So you get those two things. Another big thing is that we love questions. So if you have any questions related to this presentation, feel free to chat it in through the Zoom interface, the Q&A function, or the chat function at any time so that we can collect those questions and get those answered during and after the presentation during our Q&A phase. I think today we're going to run about 45 minutes in terms of presentation and then about 10 to 15 minutes for Q&A. All right, great. So our guest speaker today is Rachel Clements. Rachel works at Whole Whale as a digital marketing strategist. So she has a ton of experience. She's worked at World Boston, Cleveland Council, at so many different organizations that I am really excited about because this allows her to get a certain perspective of different types of organizations and how they operate and distilling that experience down to you to see what works and what doesn't work. So I'm actually gonna let Rachel do further introductions because I don't know if I can do it justice. So Rachel, I want to hand it off to you to take hold of this presentation.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Rob, for the introduction. I'll get started here and talk a little bit more about myself and Whole Whale just for a bit deeper of an introduction, but my official title is Digital Strategist Whaler. We're very nautically themed here at Whole Whale, so everyone has Whaler in the title. It's a little fun. I'm also certified in Google Analytics and Google Ads and help represent Whole Whale in the Google Ads Certified Professionals community to do a lot of online advertising and analytics related work that has helped hone some of my awareness and understanding of a lot of the digital campaigns that you all are running today at your great organizations. And then obviously I work with Whole Whale to help amplify the impact of social impact organizations and nonprofits. Some of the clients I've worked with myself in recent years include AFS USA intercultural programs, World Animal Protection, Power Poetry, the Charity Network, and many others. As Rob mentioned, Whole Whale is a digital agency, call ourselves a social impact digital agency because we work specifically with social impact organizations and nonprofits to help amplify their impact using data and technology and kind of, again, bridging the technology gap that is often out there for nonprofit organizations. What we're covering today in our 0 to 60 for online fundraising is thinking broadly about, first of all, the trends and opportunity in this area, digging into the marketing funnel and the kind of structural approach that Whole Whale takes to bring people along from an aware, engaged to committed user in your fundraising funnel. And then looking a little bit at specific elements of the fundraising and online fundraising world that we want to draw your attention to today for best practices, including donation page optimization, what's changed in social media, and also the email marketing machine. It's still kicking. And we'll talk a little bit about measuring success for these platforms as well. Part of our approach is always tying things back to data and making sure that we're doing what the data tells us works for our constituents. Let's start with trends and opportunity. First of all, just driving home the fact that there is a lot of online giving. Over $427 billion given in 2018 online, and we only expect this to go up. One of the biggest other pieces of data we want to draw your attention to down here is that 70% of that giant number is given by individuals. So what is it that helps encourage and inspire individuals to give in today's world. Well, we broke this down a little bit by some of the areas and types of donors that you all try to reach in your online fundraising work and how they differ in their preferences and inspiration for giving. Biggest thing to note, of course, is that all of them, even now through the Gen X baby boomer generations, over 50%, closer to 55% of all of your constituents prefer to give online. Everyone is giving more online. And there are some differences maybe in where people are inspired to give, difference between social media and email maybe for the baby boomer generation. And not, of course, ignoring the fact that of anyone, the baby boomer generation does still respond, over 20 or close to 20% of people responding well to direct mail. But overall, the point we want to drive home is that online giving is a trend that you can bet on, and we only expect it to increase. So these are our statistics around 2018 online giving information relative to Giving Tuesday. Obviously, big day on the horizon for a lot of your organizations. Over $400 million donated on Giving Tuesday last year in 2018, and we only expect this number to increase, predicting over $500 million given on December 4th this year. So really looking for how we can continue to kind of ride the waves of this growing online giving trend and continue to optimize messaging for your donors and making sure that they are given and that you give them the best chance to give. Yeah, again, this is a trend that we can bet on and build on. 70% of giving is coming from individuals. Most people prefer this, or over half people prefer this to be online. And it's something that is becoming a generalized norm across all generations and all types of users and donors. The other thing we really want to focus and drive home today is where otherwise, if we're focusing all this effort on online fundraising and asking people to give online, what is it that we can do that gives us the most kind of impact for our results? We like to talk about the 80-20 rule when it comes to online fundraising, but all of our work in general, which is essentially saying that usually about 80% of our results come from just about 20% of the effort. So it's really about finding which element of your efforts is going to be the thing that drives that huge aspect of results. Also called the power law, and this is also something that actually applies very well that you'll see in your donors too. About 20% of your donors end up giving 80% of total value. So it's really about finding and honing in on what is a valuable type of ask, who is a valuable type of person to target in your online fundraising, and what kind of donor, once they're in your system, is the most valuable for you to cultivate and nurture along that funnel. So getting into the fundamentals, I've already mentioned the funnel a little bit. So we're going to start with a little bit of why people give and then get into our funnel of engagement structure and how we typically talk about nurturing people along towards kind of an element of final commitment to your organization and that donation. So first, talking about giving in the brain, why do people want to give? Many reasons. First being altruism. Some people just want to do what's right, just want to be servicing great organizations like yours that are working for an impact. Also something we call the warm glow theory. People feel good because they donate, so maybe slightly less unbiased altruism. Also thinking of social status. What is it about social recognition, or even the way that your network can kind of collaborate to ask you to give. All of this again actually triggers real positive chemistry in our bodies. Dopamine is released. There's stress reduction. We feel good when we give to great causes and we contribute to organizations. It's something that benefits us and makes us feel better about the impact we are having. And that's why we really want to drive home the idea that you're not asking people to give or begging them to give. You're actually selling something to them, whereas other organizations might be selling a certain type of product. In this instance, and when we're focused on online fundraising, you're actually selling donations, and you're selling the opportunity for people to turn their money into valuable impact and into something meaningful. Those donors, as you saw, there's all sorts of social, chemical, and just emotional reasons why giving feels good and why people are interested in supporting great causes. And that's something that you are in a position to help your donors do. So not about asking or even begging for their support. It's about kind of sharing with them the opportunity to do something great. knowing a little bit more about why they give outside of some of those initial feelings of kind of support and impact and belonging to something greater. People also give because they see your organization as effective, and that's demonstrated somehow through your impact statistics, your testimonials, the stories on your site. They also might know exactly what to expect. They're a longtime donor. They understand what their dollars and their impact does for you. Receiving timely personal thank yous, personalization in general is a great way for people to feel engaged and feel like they understand kind of the impact that they're having in your organization. It gives them opportunities to weigh in or participate in some cases. They feel like they're part of an important cause. They're involved, they're appreciated. They know exactly who they're helping and what actual kind of society or group of people this work is benefiting and this donation is benefiting. So keep all of these ideas in mind when you think about the storytelling you're doing on your site and your donation pages and in your donation asks for the types of fulfillment that you can be giving to your donors and the reasons why they're interested actually in sharing with you and having that opportunity to give to you. All this brings us to, again, what we call our marketing funnel or our funnel engagement, which we map on to all the work we do with our nonprofit clients and the nonprofit sector at large. Thinking again about how we're moving somebody from an initial point of contact with your organization and some kind of higher level awareness interaction, all the way down to a place of commitment. And in this case, and for many of you, for this organization, the highest level of commitment is some kind of one-time donation or recurring larger donation at the very, very bottom layer of that funnel. So this is about creating content and telling good stories that actually get people engaged in and interested in the work you do, in showing them what impact you have and why this is a valuable cause, why this is something that they feel like they can participate in and have an effect. And that is the type of storytelling and type of general nurturing that will get them to a place of commitment and donation over time. Another way to think of this, and this is actually a very similar set of changes from a lower barrier, aware, interested, to a committed place to your organization. This is the commitment curve versus a funnel, but it is actually representing a similar kind of trajectory of user engagement with your organization. Starting with a place of low commitment and low engagement, and what kind of action can you get somebody to take in that kind of lower level engagement place? Something like a view or a like or a share of your content, easier ask than, as you can see, a contribution, an invitation, and then a donation high up here indicates a high level of engagement, a high level of commitment, making it a higher barrier action over time. So this isn't something that you can kind of just pull somebody in off the street and ask them to demonstrate that level of commitment right away. You have to work towards that along this commitment curve or through the funnel of engagement and really represent and show your constituents why that type of commitment over time has an impact for your organization and then what they kind of see as a return as a supporter. So to build on some of those fundamentals of who's giving, why are they giving, and how do we actually think of those types of engagements within the funnel and the commitment curve, we want to talk about a few elements of online fundraising that are particularly important to keep in mind, given the growing trend, given kind of the willingness of our constituents now to give online. The first thing we want to talk about is donation pages and how to optimize these for end of year giving. The most kind of concrete fundamental takeaway for the donation form is that less is always more. You think again about the barrier to commitment that the high barrier ask the donation is and what you're really asking of your users when you're putting out a donation form. You have to make it easy for them to take that kind of action because it's already taking a high level of commitment and engagement for them to consider it. So this kind of crazy form with all sorts of fields, all sorts of things to check off, much less effective than something that is easy to understand, easy to fill out, and easy to submit and to have and get that immediate feeling of impact. So we've run a couple and seen this play out as a rule in A/B tests many times. This particular example is an older one, but a good one from the Obama campaign. And you could see the difference between the control and this other variation here, which ultimately brought in the same information from the user as this original control form did. However, it did it in a sequential kind of set so that someone only saw one question or one example at a time, and wasn't as overwhelmed or driven away by the sheer amount of fields and things they were being asked to do all at once. And there was a 5% lift in donations seen from the sequential version of the form. We've also tested this type of thinking with another client of ours, the Cancer Research Institute, and thinking about some of the, what we call relative cost or anchoring concept. So you can see here what we tested was the difference between the number of donation amounts and the preset buttons. Again, everyone's thinking about, how do we actually get people to make a higher commitment to provide a more valuable donation. And you can see that down here, $1,000 is much higher than $500. The idea of anchoring is that by providing something, much higher value as a comparison, that $100 donation as the lowest amount won't feel as high of a barrier or as severe of an ask as it might have in this earlier iteration where there was even a lower amount or where the highest amount wasn't at the same threshold. This is the same concept that Starbucks uses to get you to pay, $4, $5 for a regular cup of coffees, because they're also selling fancier drinks that are $6 or $7. And in that context, it feels reasonable to pay more money for something more basic. Can be used to work in your favor in the donation landscape and the online fundraising landscape as well. Other things you want to test in terms of opting in and opting out to certain ideas are, how you can get people to complete more monthly versus one-time donations, and actually understand the benefits of a recurring donation to your organization. So that's something that testing that as an opt-in or testing monthly versus one-time calls to action is incredibly important too, and understanding what kind of messaging works for one type of donor versus another. The next thing we want to touch on is digital advertising and how social media has kind of shifted into a digital advertising landscape. Long and the short of it is that social media and organic reach on social media isn't really what it was. The organic reach for business pages and business accounts on social media across different platforms has gone down every year. And digital advertising, actually what we call a pay-to-play environment on these types of platforms, is a low cost and highly targeted way for you to actually go or re-engage your audience, and then ultimately use that kind of remarketing or engagement to grow the number of people that you can ask for donations over time. Really driving home the fact again that these things are moving away from being social media platforms to actually advertising platforms, and they're a place where you have the opportunity to really grow your audience and actually develop more of a focused fundraising campaign. The other thing we want to call attention to is that time is money. If you're still focused on organic social media as an effort for raising awareness and or increased awareness around giving season for your organization, someone's creating those posts and you're already investing time and money into the platform, but your reach is going to be so much lower than it is for actually putting money behind targeted campaigns and boosted posts. And we've seen with organizations that we've worked with that $100 a month is even enough in the nonprofit space to take advantage of some of these platforms and actually use them to grow your audiences again and support your online fundraising work. Again, driving home this example with an example from Power Poetry. This is an online platform for teen poetry. Power Poetry is co-founded by our CEO, George Weiner, and so works very closely with the Whole Whale team. We're able to see that regular posts that are taking staff time for an organization like Power Poetry, which is very small and doesn't have a lot of resources or a lot of staff, are still returning less and less reach over time, clearly pushing organizations to pay to play across these things. So very in-your-face calls to action to spend money and to boost your posts. And we've actually tested this with Power Poetry as an example and with other organizations, that you can see results for just $100 a month. Which is maybe significantly less money actually than the type of resources that correspond to a staff's time and the time that they're taking to just create those posts in general. What we see from $100 a month includes things like donations, web traffic, emails, video views, website conversions, and then the very last thing we want to focus on at this point is engagement on social posts. There's actually ways to use social media platforms these days to drive more meaningful touch points and get people in at the awareness and engagement level that you can eventually funnel again towards that state of commitment and lower level conversion with your organization. Great, and I'll definitely try to slow down a little bit apologies for anything that was going too fast earlier on. Connecting that idea of just $100 a month back to this commitment curve that we've talked about and cost per acquisition. We want to actually connect some of these lower versus high barrier actions to the discrete costs that they have, and you know what it actually takes to get these people to take these actions using, for instance, social media advertising. Obviously, something like a view or an email is a much lower level ask, and something that you again can get, you know, hundreds, thousands of clicks, even hundreds, thousands of emails for just a low number of dollars spent to campaign on a social media platform. It takes a much higher amount of money, obviously, to capture donors. Just from kind of that cold kind of advertising, we compare this a lot to asking somebody to marry you on the first date. You can't just pull somebody in off the street always and ask them to make that kind of high level commitment without first nurturing them through this commitment curve and helping them understand the value to your organization. So that is where, when you are spending any money on these types of lower barrier actions versus high barrier action, you want to also make sure that the actual return on your investment is significant enough to make these things worth it. Going back to Starbucks as an example of you know, a great advertiser these days, their cost per acquisition and the cost of the time material they're putting into getting you and all of the advertising that they're doing across different platforms is still worth less than the lifetime value of you as a Starbucks user, which is something like $14,000 in value to Starbucks. That's how much coffee you are likely to buy in your time as a Starbucks supporter with them. It's really about just making sure that that lifetime value, first of all, understanding what it is for your donors, or for an email subscriber, what is actually the lifetime value of somebody who is a committed supporter of your organization, and does that outweigh the cost per acquisition that you have across any platform that you're using for donations. The last big point we wanted to touch on is email marketing and the email machine, and how to leverage email still as a valuable element of gaining donations and also your online fundraising funnel. Why email still matters, even though you saw you know, that many of these people are interested, or some of the younger generations are most inspired by social media, email is still incredibly powerful, especially for the baby boomer generation and for targeting those types of donors. Why does it matter? Why do we think it's so valuable? One, it's an owned organizational asset, clear access to communication with these users, and what we call permission marketing. Somebody has given you permission to talk to them by giving you their email. So that already represents a way higher level of commitment, puts somebody much higher up that commitment curve and further down that funnel of engagement than somebody who's maybe just engaging with advertising on social media, for instance. Your email tools can also be connected to larger data sets. A lot of EMS platforms, again, now are making it really easy for you to kind of understand the relationship between your subscribers and your donors and how those people overlap. Other things to think about with email, we kind of separate this into three areas: the messaging, the data, and then the remarketing. How do we get people onto the list? How do we message them, and what data do we have about these people? So you have a couple ideas to think about through both messaging, then, you know, what is the reward? What do you understand about a person on your list, and how do we market them? So what to message? We like to use this example. This is Gary Vaynerchuk's jab, 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 right hook, which is, again, about nurturing people towards a place of commitment, getting them to take the action that you want them to take. We think of the jabs as the emotional trigger, the story is the value to the user. So think back to all those different reasons that we talked about for why somebody might give. There's a lot of you know, personal connection, social connection, meaningful impact moments that people, you know, want to touch on and want to see as a result of their support and their donations to a nonprofit organization. So actually focusing most of your time on that, what we call the jab, and really trying to play into that emotional trigger and to share the impact stories, particularly of your organization, to maintain the kind of authority that somebody expects or, you know, hopes that you have if they ultimately want to support you and give you a donation. The right hook is that self-promotion sales ask, and this should happen far less often than a lot of those emotional touch points. Mapping the funnel of engagement onto email in particular, think of this again as moving somebody from a top level engagement all the way down to a place of commitment with your organization. How do you actually get a subscriber, and how do they ultimately get to a place of being a donor? So someone might be discovering you online through a web search, maybe even through a friend. They've gone to your website. And then it's about optimizing certain pages on your site for email conversions, getting them interested enough in key content such that they're willing then to give you permission to continue to contact them and to share more information about your work and your impact with them. Once they're on your email list, you have control over what they see and what messaging you send to them. Again, you want to focus on the jab before the right hook, and actually spend a lot of time sending regular emails that demonstrate the impact of your stories and the impact of your organizations, and continue to nurture a place of kind of audiences expecting certain types of messaging from you, and being able to rely on that. And then after that person becomes accustomed to being a supporter and being part of your network and understanding the relationship between what you do and the people you help, that's when you want to bring in the right hook and actually share that ask for money and ultimately get somebody to a place of being a donor. This is where we bring back that 80-20 rule. Again, thinking about how so much of your work, all the time you're spending on nurturing somebody is going to be, 80% of your time sending all of those more regular emails, bringing somebody kind of along in that funnel of engagement and making sure that they have a good sense of what your organization does, the impact you're having. That will take most of your time. And that kind of final donation ask, more focused campaigning by email will take 20% of your time, but that is what will lead to 80% of the results. So this is messaging that is really crucial, even though it should happen less often, but it can't have the impact that it needs to. It can't lead to all those results without the work first to bring somebody to this point in the funnel where that type of more direct ask is now, they've been primed to a place to expect and to respect what you're doing and to actually hear that ask. So a couple of other things to pay attention to and to test and promote within your email marketing. One is subject lines and senders. So testing, first of all, fun sender names, but also the subject line. People often kind of overlook the subject line. They certainly spend far more time writing the email copy and the ask inside the email than they always do writing the actual subject line. This is another example of where 20% of the effort gets to 80% of the results. Your subject line is the only initial piece of the email that a user sees, and that's the element of your email that's going to convince somebody to open and click through in the first place. So how can we actually test A/B test subject lines, create subject lines that capture somebody's attention, again, at an awareness top level, and then encourage them to take the next action and move further down the funnel. So testing subject lines is a huge thing that should be an element of a larger and more cohesive digital fundraising strategy. Automations is another really, really important element of email marketing. First of all, just to take some of that effort time off your plate during a busy time of year. Automations in any platform, we have MailChimp here as an example because it's one that we use and that we see a lot of our nonprofit clients and kind of constituents use. But you can send automations in any email marketing service. And examples of these automations, again, emails triggered by some user action that don't have to be sent manually by your team. These include everything from a welcome series. So when somebody first signs up to your email, they're given a set of automated emails that kind of introduce them to your organization and maybe share over a couple of days or weeks the most important pieces of content on your site that somebody new to your supporter group should know about and should understand. You can also use automations to send birthday notes, to say happy birthday to your constituents. You can share like giving anniversary automations. So, noting and remembering and sending follow-up emails based on when somebody donates or has donated in the past. And you can also segment your automation. So not everybody should receive the same messaging or automations, despite the kind of like ease of use and lack of effort and time that it should take on your side. It's still worth the effort to make sure that you're sending the right messaging to the right people. Somebody who is just a subscriber but has never donated is different from somebody who has already donated. And like we mentioned, your email marketing service is easy typically to connect to your donation platform data, your Google Analytics data in many cases. So it's possible to understand the difference between where these different subscribers fall in that funnel of engagement and how you should message each of them differently as a result. These are also great ways, again, to automatically build in those kind of emotional jabs and those smaller touch points on a more regular basis without adding extra email work for your team, and then focusing more of your creative energy and more of your team's focus energy on the right hook and those particular donation campaigns. This is, already started to touch on this, but segmenting your asks in the same way that you wouldn't give the same gift to different people. You can't buy a succulent for every person in your family for Christmas. They don't all like plants. They don't all want that. And the same thing is true for your subscribers. You cannot ask people to donate in the same way, or even sell a donation as we're framing it in the same way to different people. What motivates people in different generations, or what motivates somebody who is a longtime supporter and has long understood kind of the impact of your organization, is very different from what motivates somebody who is new to your organization and doesn't understand the impact and needs to be further nurtured along that funnel. Some of the ideas for donation particular asks and how you can adjust and segment those for different people in your subscriber group is, one, tailoring the number asked based on how much a subscriber gave last year and asking slightly more, so that those types of tailoring would happen on different donor levels, and how you kind of segmented people out based on value of their donations. Including a lower barrier to entry but monthly option for your email subscribers is a huge way to segment donations, maybe between somebody who hasn't donated and a one-time donor. A smaller number, but over time will increase your revenue is very valuable. And then emailing your top and repeat donors separately, of course. So aside from just number or cost of donation that different people have given, or even subscriber versus donor, the people who give the most and who give the most often should also be treated differently and should be messaged as your kind of VIP donors, because they are. And just touching more on the value of your monthly versus one-time donors, subscribers of any kind, people who are doing something more regularly for your organization, are more valuable than your one-time buyers. This is true for donors as well as anything else. And $100 per month is greater than a $100 gift. So working on how to encourage more people to take what seems like a high barrier ask, if you think about it, but can be packaged as a low barrier kind of monthly participation in your organization, is so much more valuable over time than that, really just focusing on those one-time donations, which does, again, drive home the point that you should be nurturing and touching base with these people all the time, not just all focused on the end of year and donation asks that you're doing in kind of this giving season. Some other monthly giving statistics to call out, that 45% of donors are enrolled in a monthly giving program, so there's actually a lot more interest in that than it might feel, depending on the difference in reactions that people often have to those monthly donation asks. Monthly giving has also increased since 2017, continues to go up along with a lot of other online fundraising statistics. Donors that set up recurring donations give 40% more annually compared to one-time donors. So in general, there's no shortage of data showing that these people, monthly donors, are so much more valuable given the underlying kind of support and kind of ongoing commitment that they've already shown to your organization by committing to that monthly and ongoing recurring action. And in many cases, packaging a monthly donation as a lower level but recurring cost might resonate much more with people than does a higher ask one-time donation for end of year, especially. The other thing that we want to drive home, especially when we're thinking about the right hook element of the email marketing funnel, is repeating your message repeatedly. Say it over and over again. This is a case study we like to call out from the Environmental Defense Fund, who we work with on a podcast, and just looked a bit more at some of the success they had in some of their email marketing strategies. So even though you do want to spend all this time nurturing and connecting with these users, then you have to ask them directly for money. You have to sell them the opportunity to donate to your organization and have an impact. And what they found in this particular case, and takeaways that we like to share are one that direct asks are more effective. Don't beat around the bush. Make it clear, what is this opportunity to create impact? What is it that this money and this donation can do? They also saw from this particular email marketing campaign that the group that received 5 emails instead of 4, reiterating this ask for donations, gave 8% more. So don't worry as much as you think you should about unsubscribe rate. Asking and repeating your message and being persistent is still worthwhile. They also sent 8 direct giving asks in the last 5 days of the year, so really ramped up the frequency and kind of the persistence of that messaging. Even when it feels like things are almost kind of at their end for the giving season, people are still highly emotionally connected and ready to give at the end of the year. And then paying attention, obviously, you don't want to overthink the frequency of emails. If giving more emails is showing you more donations, but if you're seeing huge numbers of opt-outs or unsubscribes, that's where you can tell whether you've hit the limit on how much is too much for the numbers of emails that you can send to drive home this type of ask. So last section I have to go into today is measurement, and then we'll have plenty of time for Q&A, so I'm excited to talk through some of the questions that I know you all have been sharing throughout the presentation. Of course, tying this all back to measurement and then understanding the impact, we can talk a lot about the recommendations we have for A/B testing and for messaging, but there are no clear takeaways and there's no data to back it up unless we can actually see the impact that we have by tying this to your web analytics. Google Analytics is, of course, the one that we prefer, but there's obviously lots of web analytics platforms out there to help you understand the engagement that your constituents have and your users have on your site as a result of or leading up to any of your online fundraising efforts. This is just a quick glance at Google Analytics, and you are immediately able to sort people out by the source from which they came to your website, so to understand the difference between somebody who came via a referral or came via a paid effort or came via organic search, email, etc. So really look at that data and try to understand the difference between how somebody engages as a result of different types of traffic and different types of outreach to really get a sense of what messaging works the best and how also your different channels and different types of messaging can all drive towards the greater goals of your online fundraising efforts. Where else to look for data on your email tool? So we just talked about how much information you can get about a subscriber who's on your email list. There's also so much information about email engagement and the performance of your messaging for email marketing and fundraising campaigns in particular. Some of the metrics that you want to pay attention to in your email tool are open rate and click-through rate respectively. Again, open rate gives you a sense of how well your subject lines are doing. Did you even convince somebody to open your message and dive deeper and get more of the story? Click-through rate gives you a better understanding of whether somebody is actually engaged by your message, whether they followed through with the ask that you or one of the asks maybe that you have in your email and actually ended up on your site, whether that be on a resource that is nurturing them towards commitment or actually on your donation page. Bounces for email are a little different than bounces from your website, but paying attention to these and making sure that you're cleaning out emails that don't work anymore and that you're not sending emails to old addresses. Unsubscribes is a great piece of data for understanding whether or not your volume of emails is ever really oversaturating and hitting the limit on your subscriber list. And then conversion rate, who coming in as an email user is actually taking the action you want them to take, who's actually donating on your website. List growth rate and amount raised per email, also good things to understand. List growth rate from the front end as to how many people are you bringing into that funnel. Making sure that you focus on prospecting and actually growing your list before end of year donation time is so crucial. So we're really in that period right now where continuing to optimize the time you have to connect more with people on the impact story level and engage them at a pre-donation level in that funnel of engagement before really sharing a lot of your heavier end of year online fundraising strategies is really important. And then amount raised per email on the back end. Other things to pay attention to for email fundraising performance, obviously cost per acquisition, mean donation, lifetime donation. Again, are you spending more than you're receiving from donors and spending more on getting them than they're giving in that overall lifetime value? And then you want to look at your fundraising tool. Rule number one, don't lose money. We just said this as well, but donor lifetime value should outweigh the cost per acquisition and the overall amount that you're spending to generate your online fundraising efforts and the time you're taking also to maintain them. You also want to look at donor and donor growth retention. Donor growth and donor retention. So how many new donors are you bringing in versus how many are you keeping year to year or season to season, campaign to campaign. And then also looking at lapsed donors. Are those people actually people you can re-engage? Are they providing any more value to your organization after that initial cost per acquisition and cost for bringing them in? Some other benchmarks to keep in mind is that organizations retain 45% of donors year over year. This was in 2013, and 19% of first-time donors retain. So really thinking about the difference between your lapsed and your new and your lifetime donors and how the different value add of each of those people matters and how much time then you should correspondingly spend on the type of messaging you're sending to them and how much effort to recapture them or engage them for the first or second time. One last thing to share as a piece of advice is also using Data Studio and other reporting platforms and analytics platforms to make sure that those numbers are readily available to you and easy to share with your entire team and easy for you to understand the impact and the difference of what you're doing and the actual effect it's having and the number of people you're bringing in. This is an example of one of our own dashboard templates that's easy to use and easy to kind of update and customize to your personal organizational needs, but something that again calls out important statistics at a high level so that it's obvious what somebody should be paying attention to and whether what you're doing is working or not working. And if it's not working, what isn't working, what can be improved. Always be looking back at the data to actually measure these fundraising effects and making sure that you're not losing money, but that you are reaching the people that actually matter and bringing them further down that funnel of engagement towards a place where they are more primed to donate and to support your organization. And that's most of what I have to share today. We're just about at time for the Q&A section. So really wanting to reiterate to you all that this and your online fundraising efforts are capitalizing on a growing trend and a really good trend to be focused on. It's about selling the opportunity to donate and the opportunity to support and have impact. So that's what you want to focus on. And there are a lot of ways, even with more strapped resources in the nonprofit sector, where you can make use of these strategies and actually really drive home kind of the ask you're making, the impact you're having, but also nurture somebody along that funnel of engagement. So hopefully these different kind of areas of, or among these different areas of fundraising techniques, optimization that we're recommending, some of these resonate with you all, and some of them will help you guys in your fundraising strategies through end of this year.
Thanks, Rachel, for the great presentation. We have a bunch of questions coming in, so if you don't mind, I'd love to jump right into it.
Yeah, let's do it.
Right, so Cassie is asking on donation forms, and this is related to earlier on in the presentation when you presented one-time donations versus recurring donations. Like, have you tested it if people are less likely to choose monthly if the dollar amounts are higher?
That's a good test. I don't know. So in general, we see the barrier to monthly donation being higher if those amounts are higher. So I understand what you mean. And I think testing those things in isolation. So I think you're referring to that example from Cancer Research Institute. Using that like anchoring theory and adding higher donation values is probably a better approach when you're really focused on one-time donations. And then yes, thinking about lowering the cost to try to bring in more monthly donors, I think is a better separate test to run. So in general, would recommend that, again, because we saw that overall the lifetime value of monthly donors is a lot higher than a one-time donor.
Yeah, and I would like to add, like in terms of testing, it's best, you'll get better results and more insightful data if you only change one variable when it comes to your donation form versus multiple ones. So what this means is that if you're testing your one-time or recurring anchors, then what you don't want to do is use a different story or use a different subject line or use something that's totally different than what you're testing against. Otherwise, you'll get different results.
Absolutely.
Yep. Another question that we have in is from Naomi. She's asking, like, a lot of what you presented today is really around, sounds a lot like just marketing in general, like digital marketing. Like, is there a big difference between for-profit marketing and nonprofit marketing?
So we like to think no in many cases. A lot of the work that we do at Whole Whale is to help nonprofits and just any social impact organizations with less resources understand how they can still use any of the general marketing techniques that work, maybe with slightly less time or less money, depending on what is needed for your organization. I'd say the biggest difference in that marketing is, of course, the actual impact storytelling that you can do alongside it, and obviously the really great work that is tied to the results of your marketing. And that's the kind of nuance and emotional appeal that is more, singular to nonprofit organizations and should definitely be leveraged throughout your entire marketing funnel, let alone just in your donation period.
Yeah, I think one thing that's really interesting is that traditionally a lot of nonprofits don't have a marketing funnel. Like how they do fundraising was really a little bit haphazard, maybe not planned, really project oriented versus system and engine oriented. So when you have this shift towards old ways of fundraising to digital and online ways of marketing, then there needs to be a lot more structure to it. Because historically, a lot of organizations just fundraise once a year or twice a year versus every single day. So having an engine, having a process is really important. And I really love what you presented with that funnel. Craig has a question. This is related to more kind of source information. So you presented like a lot about organic versus like organic reach on social versus paid reach. Could you define that a little better for our audience?
Yeah, that's a great question. So when we use organic in the sense of social media, really just talking about a user that's coming from any like regular post that you put out on any of those platforms versus somebody who's clicked through on an ad that you're running on those platforms. They would all, they'd mostly be attributed as like social media traffic if you're looking at web analytics, not organic traffic, which is in analytics, that's for users that come from search. But what we were talking about was, again, all on social media platforms. Who's clicking on a regular post and who's clicking on an ad. And what we've seen is that regular posts are just deprioritized so much in this day and age that actually putting money behind the ads, even if it's just a little bit, can usually have a greater impact in connecting you with more people than your regular post would, which even though it feels like it's free, it's still costing somebody time and money to create. So that's kind of the underlying message there.
Yeah, so basically organic reach is like when you post on, let's say Facebook, like how many people can actually see the post versus how many people, like that post doesn't even show up on their newsfeed. So bringing in the paid side of it allows you to increase the amount of times it shows up on people's news, or more likely to show up on someone's newsfeed. Yep. Rebecca has a question related to for small nonprofits. So let's say you're really small, maybe one full-time person or a couple of part-time folks. This is related to donations. So do you notice a decrease in donations that you get if you request donor data versus having an anonymous donation?
Sorry, can you explain the difference a little bit more? So a difference between an anonymous donor to a smaller nonprofit versus somebody that's giving you some kind of information or permission marketing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I think there's a couple of different ways about it, like to look at this question. Maybe it's talking about like the number of fields you have on the donation form, like whether you're asking for like first name, last name, plus postal address, plus like other information. Like, does that decrease the amount of donations you get?
Yes. So in general, I know there's very few nonprofits who want somebody to donate without capturing any information about them. But typically the limiting number of fields, as limited of a number of fields as you can have, the better. And the more likely somebody is to actually follow through with that action. You could see, that example from the Obama campaign is actually a good one, where ultimately they were still actually asking people to give the same amount of information, but they are presenting it in a more focused and less overwhelming way, just in multiple stages. And even that kind of change resulted in higher donations or more donations. So I would say, it's definitely more valuable. It's definitely valuable to get information from your donors, because then that's how you understand how to reach back out to these people and to keep them in your network. But limiting what you consider necessary information to maybe even just an email as much as possible can help. It's just more about, I think, visually how you format those asks and how you can focus somebody's attention in on what you're encouraging them to do and how easy it is to do it, or how easy it appears to do.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Like, what you don't want to do is present a whole block of fields for someone to fill out. That just looks overwhelming. People are put off by it. But if you can package it in a way where it's step by step, then that allows them to easily go through the 2 or 3 different steps needed. I also think you made a great point where you don't want to ask for more information than you want to, right? So what you can do is, if you have a donor management system, if you have an existing donor, then you probably don't want to ask them the same questions over and over again on your donation form. So you may just need to collect their first name, last name, and then their email address, and then just a card number. And that can make a faster experience than presenting a long block of fields. So yeah. Love that insight.
That's a great point. We like to say, there's a quote that, wealth of information creates a poverty of attention. So collecting info that you don't need, actually that also makes an ask seem like more effort, is never worth it. So really focusing on what are the bare minimum things you need to continue to personalize your messaging to this person and keep them on your list, and that's really it.
Yep. Another question we have is, what do you have in your, if you have any nonprofits that other folks should follow for some marketing inspiration?
Ooh, so many. One that's coming to mind, I have 2 that are coming to mind, focusing on different elements. So one is Donate Life America, which markets about organ donation registration versus donation as a final ask. But thinking about them in particular, how they connect impact storytelling to actually getting people to take a specific action is really, really impressive. Very cool. And then I also mentioned World Animal Protection. That is a great example of, how are you using imagery and, visual appeals, animals in particular, that are already kind of taking over the internet to optimize some of your marketing efforts. Really all of it, all of the good examples I can think of are organizations that tie impact storytelling to all of their marketing efforts, as we talked about. So really demonstrating what you do and the effect it's having through statistics, through images and visual examples of your impact.
Great. Another question that we have is around your $100 a month budget for social. So I know Wholewell has this great presentation on $100 paid media budget. Could you kind of talk a little bit more about how someone can get started, as well as if they want to find out a little bit more, where they can learn a little bit more about that?
Yes, that is a great question. This idea did start, I think, I ran through it pretty quickly relative to Power Poetry. But as I mentioned, they're a close partner organization of ours, and they work with a very limited staff, very limited funds. So it really started with the idea of how much impact can we get with a low budget on social media in particular. Again, reacting to the fact that we're already putting time and money into trying to maintain a social presence and it's getting us nowhere. How could, X number of dollars actually improve our performance or improve the number of key conversions that we can gain from that work? That's where it started from, and we have seen it, have a lot of effect with an organization like Power Poetry and with some of our other nonprofit clients that we work with. But we have a lot more information on that. As Rob mentioned, we have a whole presentation on it. I have presented it a couple times, but we have information on our website at wholewhale.com, and also a step-by-step video series on our YouTube channel, which is Whole Whale TV, that actually walks you through this concept relative to each type of social media platform that we focus on.
Great. Question from Melissa asking about this in the context of board members. So let's say someone wants to get started with online fundraising and grow the donor base. If a board member is asking, well, how long does it take to actually build a donor base? Like, what's the best answer to give them?
In terms of how long it takes, I think you want to, again, err on the side of needing time to nurture somebody. That doesn't have to take more than a couple weeks, but a lot of the strategies and marketing strategies that we work with nonprofits, especially earlier in the year, I think of it more seasonally, is when you're focusing on like prospecting and lead generation versus when you're focusing on donations. And it's always worth it in order to grow a real donor base to have like lower barrier, higher level interactions with somebody first. So that's where you can actually, I think, justify more emphasis of your content marketing strategy to bring in new people, of your email marketing strategy and email acquisition strategy to bring in new names before you hit them with a donation ask. There's still time through end of year, even at this point. You can bring in people with a lead generation ask and then ask them for donations in a couple of weeks. So I don't think there's like a clear amount of time to put on it, as much as impressing upon them that you want to take someone through a couple of stages so that you're not asking them for this high level of support out of the blue, which we see the lowest return on that, absolutely.
Yeah, and one thing to add to that, I think it's a matter of framing expectations too. So if board members asking, hey, like how long does it take us to actually build a donor base? The right question to ask and to reframe it is like, well, we want to build a donor base. Well, how many donors does it mean? Or how much money do we want to raise? So set the goalpost. And then from there, you want to set some milestones that reach that. So like, well, we need to acquire 100 email addresses first, or 1,000 email addresses. How long does it take to do that? Well, how long does it take to set up like a marketing funnel? So that allows you to break down a bigger problem into something more tangible so that your board or a specific board member can really understand how much work it actually takes to do something, so you can set those expectations. Another question that we have come in really is around Google Ads certification. So would you recommend nonprofit folks, nonprofit dev staff, development staff, or marketing communication people to become Google Ads certified or seek out other certifications?
Yeah, it is definitely useful. I mentioned both the analytics and ad certification, and I think useful just from the perspective of it's a structured way to force yourself to learn about these platforms and get a better handle on them. You do get like a LinkedIn badge if that's helpful too. We do recommend, Google is the biggest search engine in the world, and having a concept or having a grasp on the concept of Google Ads, opens up a whole other channel of marketing for you, both for a general user touch point awareness as well as a fundraising ask. So I do think it's valuable, analytics, especially for understanding how to tie that back to data. The other thing I'd mention on the Google Ad side is that there is a grant out there for nonprofits, the Google Ad Grant, that does offer some free advertising in-kind money on Google platforms to use as a nonprofit. So that's something to look into as well.
Great, sounds good. And we just have 1 minute left. So Rachel, if someone wants to learn a bit more about you or the work you do, or if they have further questions, where should they go and how can they best contact you?
Absolutely. So you can learn more about me and about Whole Whale at wholewhale.com. But I know we talked about a lot of things today very quickly. So my own email is just rachel@wholewhale.com. Rob, I don't know if there's an easy way to share that in a follow-up too, but please feel free to reach out to me with personal questions. And then I want to say, we have a slide here. So we also have our contact information for the general, like Whole Whale general asks, and all of our social handles as well. And we also have within our website a whole section that's course specific, learning focused for nonprofit staff interested in developing these skills. So please feel free to reach out to me with more questions, to explore our site, and to reach out to the rest of the team too.
Yep. Rachel, thanks so much. We got tons of thank yous from Princess Leia Lucas Foundation, from Kelly from Melissa, from Carly. So many thank yous on your presentation today. So thank you so much for that. In terms of housekeeping, we are at time. You'll get an email from me or someone on the Cosmox side related to this recording. Rachel, is it okay to share the slides as well with the audience today?
Yes, I believe so. I can double check, but this should be yours to reference and review, and obviously ask more questions as they come up.
Okay, great. So you'll get a link to the slides as well, so you can review that. And also, Rachel, I'll include your email address in the summary email so that folks can contact you directly if they have any questions.
Awesome. Great. Thank you so
All right.
much. Pleasure to be here.
Thanks so much. Thanks so much, Rachel. You have a good one.